My name is YJ, and this is my first year on T. Because I'm new to the channel, I wanted to give a little bit of an introduction. I'm 20 years old from the Washington, D.C. area. I'm a FTM trans guy. I also identify as gender nonconforming, but I use he, him, his pronoun. I am over half a year on testosterone and about a year post-op. A little bit about me personally. I'm currently a college student. I love to animate, and I'm a boxer. When did I know I was trans? When I was in middle school, I had my first crush on my best friend at the time. And so I started questioning whether I was queer, whether I was gay, whether I was lesbian or bisexual. I started putting on all these hats to describe my sexuality. And so I finally decided that maybe I was gay. I never identified with the term lesbian. But I was reading an article about transgender folks when it clicked and it hit me, and it brought me back to my childhood when I had always seemed to identify with the masculine part of myself. People talk about moments in their life when they realize that their gender identity doesn't match the identity they were given at birth. For me, that happened a lot in my childhood, from playing Animal Crossing and having my character be a boy named Matthew, to choosing the little blue characters in the game of life. But I didn't really gain the vocabulary to describe how I was feeling until I entered high school. And I'd always been characterized as a tomboy, but that's by no means a necessity to be trans. But those are the types of things that had me thinking about my gender identity. I also was very uncomfortable in my body. It was too feminine, and it gave me a lot of dysphoria. And so I started presenting more masculine. I changed the way I dressed. I cut my hair for the first time, and it made me so happy. It was this like punk rocker look, and it just made me really happy and a lot more comfortable expressing myself the way I did. That lasted for about 3 years when I was just playing with my identity, seeing what I identified as. And so I never really came out to anyone as I was figuring this out myself. But I first came out to my best friend as trans when I was 15 years old. I played with a lot of different identities to describe my sexuality before I found the term transgender to encompass my gender identity as well. I currently identify as FTM, but also gender nonconforming, because I don't believe in the binary. But in the subsequent years, I told my brothers, some of my other close friends, but I didn't tell my parents, and I didn't tell the public. I didn't come out publicly as transgender. It was something that I was very closeted about, and although I changed my gender presentation by cutting my hair and changing the way I dressed, I never explicitly came out as trans until I entered college, much later. One thing that I noticed pretty early on was that there were no trans and Asian people sharing their stories at the time. This was back in 2013, and so I really didn't have any resources to go to online of people sharing their stories. And I wish I would have taken it upon myself to share my story back then, because it was a really isolating and lonely period for me, because it felt like I couldn't be trans and be Asian at the same time. I couldn't be Korean American and be queer. And so it always felt like I had to choose. And so a lot of times I didn't choose my trans identity, and that's why I was quiet for so long. That's why I didn't really tell anyone besides my closest friends, and even then I wasn't sure if I ever was going to go public. And when I went to college and I started dressing more feminine, and I thought that's what would eventually make me happy if I just tried to conform, a lot of that was rooted in not wanting to upset my family, and also feeling like I needed to be a good Korean American, and I wanted to have Korean friends and be part of the Korean community, and I didn't think that was possible if I was also trans. This was all before I even came to terms with my public identity as a trans person. And that had to do with a lot of internalized transphobia. It had to do with a lot of fear of safety and a lot of family issues, but it was just something that I didn't do. I decided to grow out my hair and live as a female full-time because I thought that's what would make me happy, and I tried to push down all my feelings of gender dysphoria, all my feelings of being trans. But it didn't work. It didn't make me happy. I wasn't in a good place, and so I decided that transitioning was something that I needed to do. And so that's when I came publicly forward as transgender and asked people to use he and pronouns, asked people to recognize my identity. I started living that way out, came out in the workplace, and I was very fortunate to have a relatively positive experience in the workplace and amongst friends. And although I lost people, I gained a lot of people too. But now, here I am, several years later. I've figured out my relationship to my ethnic identity. I figured out that I'm trans, and that I'm gender nonconforming, and that I'm queer, and that I'm happy. I've figured out ways to deal with my dysphoria, and I've come a long way in my transition, and I'm just excited for the future. I don't know what to say.